We all want to feel peace in our lives. Peace in our choices, our beliefs, our relationships, and our environment. I've learned that this desired contentment is often found through holding on to less. When we pare down what we own, what we consume, and what we value, we're left with what's intentional, a personalized curation of what is important and true and useful to us. I'm Shannon Leyko, and you're listening to Paring Down, a podcast aimed at helping you declutter not only your home, but any area of your life that's overwhelming. Here, we're having interesting and honest conversations about the physical and mental clutter that drowns out what truly matters to each of us. And together, we'll learn how to pare it all down, not for the sake of perfection or becoming rigid, rather so we can move through life with less overwhelm and more joy, wisdom, and peace. This episode is brought to you by Picta's brand new photo organization community, aptly titled Photo Declutter Community. Picta is a photo printing service who wants to make sure you have room for the memories you truly love by decluttering the rest. I couldn't love that more. They created a free Facebook group that already has 250 members who are ready to clear out their photo mess and organize their pictures to create lasting projects, albums, and organized memories. This Facebook group will help you free up space on your devices so you can continue documenting your memories without worrying that you won't have room. And they offer weekly challenges with prizes and tons of support to make sure that organizing your pictures is actually fun. If you've listened to episode 24 of this podcast called Decluttering Photos on Your Phone and in Your Home, you know how much I struggle with photo clutter. So this group is for people like you and me who are tired of duplicates, blurry pics, and screenshots clogging up our phones or old 4x6s floating around in the house without meaning. Join this community for free by searching the Photo Decluttering Community on Facebook. And when you join, you'll get 40% off site-wide for Picta's photo printing services by stating that you learned about the group from the Paring Down podcast. You can also get the direct link to join in the show notes of this episode. Speaking of episodes, let's dive into the one I have for you today. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I'm Shannon, your host of Paring Down, and it is always a pleasure to have you back. Right now, I am low-key stressed, like not terribly, but there's a hurricane heading toward my area of Florida, which is not uncommon, but it looks like schools might be closed the rest of the week. Today, I'm recording on a Tuesday, so 1 week in advance of when you will be hearing this episode, if you're listening to it live. If you're listening back in like a year from now, hi, hello from 2024. Anyway, so there's a lot going on right now, but in a sense, it has made me think a lot about my relationship with stuff because God forbid something happen and most of our things get ruined or, you know, a tree comes crashing down on the house or whatever it is. If we're not here, then as long as we're okay, I'm okay, you know, and I have to remind myself that, of course, I respect people who have lost things in natural disasters and the grief that is associated with losing their belongings. That is 150% valid. However, it's just nice as a reminder to myself that I do feel a sense of freedom from my belongings and from our possessions because I have worked so hard to identify my values and my purpose outside of what we own. So I'm not hoping that all of our stuff gets ruined in a hurricane, but it has been interesting to consider as we start to pack for an impending evacuation. Like, what do we bring with us? And frankly, as long as my kids and my puppies and my husband and like maybe our passports and social security cards are with us, like I'm pretty good. I feel pretty good. Would I like to have a home, a roof over my head when this is all said and done? Yeah, I would. But I just wanted to share those thoughts because that is what's going on in my little life right now. I hope that your little life does not include an impending hurricane. Anywho, okay, so today you are here not to hear about Shannon's hurricane disaster, but to hear about getting past the money wasted when decluttering. We can get really caught up in this and be like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm just watching dollar signs go into the trash can whenever I get rid of something, right? And you want to get your money's worth of your belongings, even the ones that you've never touched, right? And we're going to talk about that too. But like this idea of parting with things feels like throwing money out the window. And so you're tempted to maybe sell anything that you part with, even if it doesn't hold much value to potential buyers. Again, we'll talk about that. But then maybe the selling process is too tedious, so you never get around to it. But you can't get past this mental roadblock of, all the money that's being wasted by getting rid of your stuff because you spent your hard-earned money on it. And listen, first of all, I want you to know that it is good to be good stewards of our money. I think we should think about what things cost and consider what we already own and what we've, invested our money into and how we can make the most of that and not make irrational choices that cost us more money in the future. Like, I am all about being good with money. I am particularly good with money, I will say. I grew up with a father. He's like a military man, and I feel like he always just was really, my mom was too, really good about being strict with savings and money management and not living outside of your means and all of that. Like, I am very proud of the way that I've managed money in the past. Like, I'll never forget when I was young and like living in New York City, and at first, the first, I guess, maybe 6 months of living there, I shared a bedroom in this high rise in Brooklyn with my girlfriend who I'd moved up there with. She and I had done pageants together, and we were good friends, and we were like, let's move to New York City together and pursue Broadway and singing YOLO. We were 23 years old. That's the time to do it. So we found this place to live, and it was actually a 2-bedroom apartment that had been converted classic New York style into a 3-bedroom by like a temporary wall being put up in the living room. So our roommate, Kevin, he lived behind the partition in the living room. And then another girl was in one room. And then Brittany and I shared the third room. So there was 4 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment. And that was an adventure. And then from there, Brittany and I got a 1-bedroom apartment, still sharing the bedroom. Because hey, you share a bedroom in college, like in a dorm room. Like, it's not insane when you're 23. So we shared a room there. And then eventually I got my own little that would be huge. I think it was like 250 square foot studio apartment up in the Heights. If you guys have seen the musical or watched the movie In the Heights, that's like right where I lived in Washington Heights. Anyway, you don't care. If you don't care about Manhattan or New York City, or musical theater, then that probably doesn't mean anything to you. But lived in the Heights in my little tiny studio. I was obsessed with it. But the point is that all that time living in New York, I never went into debt because I never took cabs because I didn't have any money. I was sharing a bedroom. I was working my little hiney off at a restaurant to make money. And I just feel like I look back at that time in my life and I'm like, okay, that's proof that I'm a good steward with my money because I didn't borrow money from mommy and daddy to be there. Not to say that I'm not privileged. I do, I'm very grateful for the lifestyle that I was raised in, but I did all of that by myself, and I think that set the foundation for me in my adulthood to always make good choices with money. So enough about me bragging about how good I am with money. That was not the point to do, but I just wanted to share that I really do believe in being good stewards of our money, okay? Before I get into this episode. And I want to lead with this heavy disclaimer that I know that there is a certain amount of privilege in decluttering. Now, I don't agree with decluttering critics who say decluttering is only for the privileged. And you're going to hear a little bit more about why I don't agree with that as I make some of my points on today's episode. That said, if anything I say doesn't apply to you or your financial situation, remember that I am just one little human who I try to hold a wide lens and take into account like an empathetic perspective. But my advice or mindsets might not cover the entire swath of the human experience. So take what works for you and leave the rest. Capiche? That's what I say to my kids. And then my little kids go, capiche? None of us really know what it means, but moving on. Okay, so let's start by addressing some of this guilt that comes up, the money guilt, before we get into the practical, like money itself. Let's talk about the emotion behind it. And that is the guilt that we feel as we declutter. Now, I'm going to point you back to episode 14 of the Paring Down podcast here. It's titled Emotions We Feel When Decluttering. I kind of feel like I should maybe rename it because I feel like people go to that episode expecting to work through the really hard feelings that come up when you're maybe getting rid of sentimental items or that kind of thing. And I think that's in there. I haven't listened to it in a while, but really I'm talking through these different emotions that we might have a hard time identifying and how they might show up while we're decluttering. It's not just about hard emotions. But anyways, the point is that episode, Emotions We Feel When Decluttering, I touch on this idea of guilt versus shame. And the entire episode is based off Brene Brown's book called Atlas of the Heart, where She offers different terminologies, like for different emotions that we might not think of, because most people just think happy, sad, angry, right? And there's so many more emotions that we should learn how to identify so that we can use them in a positive and productive manner. So in her book, she talks about the difference between shame and guilt. And I'm going to read kind of an overview of her differentiation. So, shame is a painful feeling of being flawed and unworthy of love and belonging. Shame is a focus on the self. It's often unspeakable. We keep it hidden. And Brene Brown believes that shame is not helpful or productive and can, in fact, lead to destructive behavior. So, shame is I am wrong or I am flawed, versus guilt is I did something flawed. So here's kind of a bigger picture of guilt. It's this feeling of psychological discomfort that arises when our actions or failures don't align with our values. Okay, so guilt is focused on behavior rather than the self, and it can motivate change if handled compassionately. So Brene believes that guilt is adaptive and helpful and can lead to remorse and attempts at making amends. So it really is purposeful and useful in making different choices moving forward. So shame is not useful. Shame is destructive. It is saying, I am bad, I am unworthy, I am X, Y, and Z. It's identity based, versus guilt is my behaviors and my actions didn't align with what I believe to be the best thing I should have done. And that's a good thing, because then it kind of points us in a different direction for next time. It's how we change and grow and become better human beings, you know? So I say this because I want you to know that it's okay if you have a little guilt when you're decluttering items that cost you money. In fact, that's a good sign. That means that you know you want to make different choices moving forward. That is motivation. So I don't think we should try to avoid any guilty feelings. Like, I don't think we should avoid decluttering so that we avoid the guilt associated with it. We need to face that guilt head on and appreciate it for what it is, which is an arrow pointing us in a different direction as we move forward. Okay, so let's get into some of these mindset shifts, some of these more practical ways of looking at the idea of wasting money by decluttering things that we spent our money on. So the first one is going to be the one you hear most commonly, but let's dive a little bit more deeply into it. And it is that you are not getting your money back by holding on to your items. Okay, that's the first mindset shift to tell yourself. You're not getting your money back by holding on to these items. The money has already been spent, right? It is a sunken cost, but what we struggle with is the sunk cost fallacy that comes into play and kind of like confuses our sweet little brains. So the sunk cost fallacy is this phenomenon where a person is reluctant to abandon a strategy or like do something different because they've invested so heavily into what they're already doing, be it with their money, with their efforts, with their time, with their emotions. You've already invested into that. And so you hold on to it because you feel like, well, I've already held on to it this long because I've already, put this much effort and this much money into it. And so I'm just going to keep holding on to it, even when abandoning that continued course of action would be more beneficial. So some examples outside of decluttering might be you stay in a relationship even though you're unhappy because you feel like you've invested so much time. You've already been together for 5 years. You might as well, try and work it out, right? That is the sunk cost fallacy. Another one might be you finish a movie or a book that you don't really enjoy or you're not liking because you've already paid for it or you've started reading it. I am so guilty of this. I have such a hard time not finishing a book that I've started, even if I don't enjoy it. I'm getting better at it this year, but yeah, I get that one. Another one might be like from like in a workplace environment, maybe a boss or a company keeps an incompetent employee on staff because the company has already invested so much money and time into training them that it's like, we're going to just keep them on instead of starting fresh with somebody new, even though down like big picture, it might be more beneficial for them as a whole. Their culture gets better. People work better together. They make more money for the company. And at the end of the day, it might have been better just to start fresh with someone new. But because of that sunk cost fallacy, they keep the same person on. Okay, so those are some examples. But with clutter, really what you're doing is you're waiting for that moment that it's been worth it to hold on to this item, right? Like proof that the time and space you've invested into holding on to it has finally come. Like I've held on to it for this long. I might as well keep holding on to it because the second I get rid of it, I'm probably going to need it and I don't want to have to buy it again. So I'm going to just keep holding on to it. Okay, that is the sunk cost fallacy. I love this quote from Amanda Montell in her book, The Age of Magical Overthinking. She says, in regards to the sunk cost fallacy, we tend to persevere, telling ourselves that the win we expected is coming any moment from now. That way, we don't have to admit to ourselves that we made a bad bet and lost, right? There's humility in saying, oh, I just have to cut my losses and recognize that I probably shouldn't have made that purchase and move on. And we're going to talk about why the moving on piece is really more beneficial for your wallet than holding on to it. But like, there's that humility piece with the sunk cost fallacy and just saying, okay, the win I expected from this item of having somewhere to wear that dress that I thought would look really cute, of actually using my food saver, of whatever it is that I think is going to happen eventually, that like we have to say, okay, I made a bad bet. It's probably not going to happen because it hasn't happened so far, and move on. So really what we're saying here is that you're not getting your money back, right? That it is already gone. So holding onto the items doesn't mean you're getting your money back. It's not showing up magically in your account again by holding onto your items. And as these things sit in our closets or in our garages, we might think, but I don't want to make a repeat purchase, right? That's where we see the money still in play. And I think that's where I don't think decluttering is only for the privileged who can afford to buy something a second time. I think that's the argument that is made, is if you're decluttering stuff, then you are assuming that you can replace it in the future should you need that type of an item. But here's the rub with that. Here's why I don't agree with that. You're actually more likely to make repeat purchases when you own so much that you don't remember you have something anymore. Okay. So people who don't have a lot of money and they wouldn't be able to replace something even as small as a 50-cent toothbrush, and so they have hundreds of toothbrushes that they've accumulated over the years, and maybe 50 cents would be a lot for them. And I respect that. 50 cents can be a lot for different members of society who live in different areas with different struggles. Fine. But at the end of the day, if all of those toothbrushes are tucked away under your bathroom sink, so squished back in there that you don't even know you have extra toothbrushes, then you're more likely to make a repeat purchase anyway, especially those of us who maybe we do have a little bit of privilege and a little bit more money. We might think it's faster to just buy this right now than looking for it, if we do remember that we have it, right? I know my husband has mentioned this before. I think he mentioned this on our episode 19, Decluttering as a Couple, but like how he would buy all this stuff because he's a stuff guy. He struggles with that. And let's take something like a hammer in the garage. He knows he has a hammer. He knows he has the type of hammer. I don't know if there's different types of hammers. I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to tools, but let's say there's different types of hammers. He knows he has that hammer somewhere in the garage or in the past in the storage unit, right? But he's not entirely sure where. And it's just faster to buy the $10 new hammer than going to look for it, right? So he's making that repeat purchase versus if he had decluttered and didn't have all of this stuff in the garage, he could just easily walk out and go grab the one hammer that he knows where it is in a decluttered, organized space, right? So we're making these repeat purchases by holding on to so much. And then it makes more and more stuff, right? And then it's this snowball effect. And you might be like my husband and know what you do have and then still consciously say it's faster to buy something. Or you might think you know what you own, but you don't. This is where I struggle. So like in the past, I would notice that I would, see this really cute dress on, I don't know, an Instagram ad that knows me really well. And they know, oh, Shannon likes bold colors, like pink dresses. And so they would tempt me with a dress. I'd be like, oh, that's so cute. I don't have that dress. And so I buy it and then I'm putting it in my closet or I'm wearing it and I'm going to get dressed. And I notice that I have 3 pink dresses that are midi dresses that have sleeves and they're all somewhat similar. Like I didn't realize that I really already had something like that, So we're making these repeat purchases versus if I really have decluttered my closet, which I have now, I can pretty much tell you every single piece in there without having to think about it. And I used to think I could do that, but I couldn't actually. And even now, gosh, when I had, I was going to be the keynote speaker a couple of months ago at this event. And I was like, gosh, I don't think I have anything to wear. Like, I don't think I have like keynote speaker clothing. And instead of going to buy something, I actually took the 2 seconds to go to my wardrobe, which is very easy to look through because it's decluttered. And I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot I have this jumpsuit. Even though, yes, I had worn it I don't know, 2 months earlier. I had just worn it, but like my brain doesn't compute sometimes. So like we make these repeat purchases, and it's a lot worse when we have more stuff to sift through and try to figure out if we actually need it. The point of all of that is to say you are making those repeat purchases. Those ones that we say, oh, decluttering is only for the privileged because they can afford to make a repeat purchase. So many people are already doing that and spending their money and not, in fact, saving money by having something that they could use again down the line because they have too much of it. So that's the first mindset. You're not getting your money back by holding on to items. The second mindset is you already got your money's worth. You already got it. Even if you've never worn it or never used it, you've already gotten your money's worth. And let me tell you why. You can thank that sweet little item, that elliptical that you never got on, or that you got on 3 times before you realized, it was better used as a drying rack. Okay. You can thank that for the dopamine hit it gave you when you acquired it. There's a couple things here, but that's the first one, is that you already got your money's worth because it made you really happy in the moment you got it. And that's worth something. Okay. So dopamine means our body is doing what it's supposed to do. It's a good thing. Dopamine's role in the reward system is an evolutionary adaptation that rewards us for behaviors which help us survive, like eating, drinking, reproducing. That's why our little mouths salivate. We get that dopamine hit when we know we're about to eat that warm chocolate chip cookie with a vanilla ice cream melted onto it, right? That's good and fatty and high caloric food that our body is like, ooh, that's going to keep me warm when I don't have any more food because we haven't found a moose in 2 months, right? But we don't shoot moose. Well, I don't. I don't live in Alaska. I actually, in fact, used to live in Alaska and know people that go moose hunting, and that is what they eat during the winter. But anyway, you are probably just eating that ice cream because it tastes good, but your body is giving you that dopamine hit because it tells you that ice cream is going to keep you alive longer, right? Same thing with drinking or reproducing, right? I mean, it's like, this is going to feel great. And also it keeps you alive, or keeps the human race alive. So dopamine is a good thing. It means your body's doing what it's supposed to do. And when it comes to the item that we're excited about buying, we think it's going to help us in some way. Therefore, the dopamine goes off, right? It's something is solving a problem. Ooh, I'm actually going to I'm going to cook food for my family because I'm getting this new air fryer, or this dress is so cute, or this water bottle is so cool. And it provides belonging to a community, which evolutionarily, I don't know if that's the word, but anyway, it helps us survive to belong to a community or to attract a mate. So you're buying these things that are cute or cool or whatever. And it's not that you're just being a dum-dum. You are actually thinking that it's going to solve a problem, or your little brain tells you that this is going to benefit you in some sort of a way. And so the dopamine then releases into your system. And also dopamine is good for your body. Okay. So doctors also use dopamine to treat low blood pressure, which I need, apparently. I went to the doctor the other day and my blood pressure was like 96/62, which is apparently very low. And so explains why I get lightheaded when I stand up too fast from the couch. I thought that, I don't know what I thought. Anyway, enough about my health concerns. Maybe I need more dopamine in my life. Maybe I should go shopping. LOL, no, not actually. I'm kidding. Anyway, okay, so doctors use dopamine to treat low blood pressure, poor cardiac output, and poor blood flow to vital organs, which probably is part of blood pressure, right? I don't know anything. What am I talking about? But the point is that dopamine is good for our bodies. Okay. So when you bought that item and you got to enjoy that dopamine hit, that in itself has value. That's great. I'm so happy you felt so happy when you bought that item. I am so happy that you thought that was so cute and you just had to have it. Okay. That's fine. That's good. However, dopamine fades, which we all know, because dopamine is actually what scientists call the anticipation molecule, because it releases in large amounts when we anticipate a pleasurable experience. Okay. So once the experience is over, the dopamine is gone. So think about it like this, like you anticipate eating that yummy brownie, or you anticipate the excitement of a purchase, which is why advertisers exploit that impulse, right? That's why we talk about slowing down and taking a pause before making purchases, because it's probably just that dopamine anticipation flooding your system. That anticipation is what makes it exciting. And then you eat the brownie and you're like, oh my God, I feel so sick, right? But you still want it the next time because it's the anticipation of how yummy it's going to taste. But eating the brownie is like, it's enjoyable maybe for a moment, but it's actually probably not even as enjoyable as like watching the waiter walk towards you with the brownie. You know what I mean? Okay, so the point is you got your money's worth by enjoying the dopamine at the time that you bought it, no matter how fleeting that dopamine is, okay? The second reason you got your money's worth is that even though the dopamine fades, you now have the value and the money's worth of the lesson you learned to slow down your shopping and consumption in the future. So the only way we learn lessons, truly, unless we're like in school for it and are mature enough to take the lesson that somebody else has taught us without, firsthand experience, which how many of us do that, right? It's so hard to take advice from someone. We usually just do whatever we're going to do and then we learn the hard way. That's just like the way humans are made, right? That's why like I never give people relationships advice or like have any opinions on anything like that. I'm like, you're not going to listen to me anyway, right? Like there's nothing I can say. That's just how humans are. So you aren't going to learn the important lesson moving forward to change your shopping habits if you haven't made bad choices in the past. Okay. So you got your money's worth for all of the money you're going to save in the future by making these bad choices in the past. That is value and how it teaches us to move forward differently. We now recognize that those certain rewards are fleeting. In this case, the dopamine hit, right, is fleeting. So moving forward, we grow as a person and say, okay, that dopamine hit was great. And maybe it's what I needed at the time. And I'm not mad at it. I don't have to be mad at myself and kick myself and say, you're such a dum-dum for buying this. However, I can be more intentional moving forward. I have the foresight to know that the long-term stress of a cluttered home or the long-term stress of being in debt and not having money because I spent it on things that I don't actually need or use is not worth that momentary dopamine hit. And that's a wonderful lesson to have learned. So you've gotten your money's worth not only through that momentary dopamine hit, which was a good time, but you also got it through this long-term lesson that's going to benefit you the rest of your life. Hey, that's a great thing. Okay. And this last mindset that is important to consider is that the money from selling your items may not outweigh the benefit of donating your items or trashing them if that is the more appropriate thing to do. So let's talk about some downsides of selling, because what's the upside? I don't think I need to tell you the upside of selling your items. Like, you will get more money. That's the upside. So let's talk about the downsides. Number one, items lose value just like cars depreciate in value. So even if it's new in the box, even if you never opened it, the second a car drives off the lot, it loses value. And the second you take that box out of the store, your item loses value. Okay. So you're not going to be able to get the exact amount back for it, no matter how new it is. And most of our items are used. So then you're really not going to get the value out of it. Okay. The second downside is that you have to take pictures, especially if you're selling online, which most of us are doing. I mean, maybe it's a yard sale, but that takes time to set up too. But it's this time lost. You have to take pictures and video, and you have to arrange the items in a way that looks attractive. You need to write a description and you need to post it up. Those steps aren't hard in and of themselves, but I think all of us have experienced just not wanting to do something simple because it feels like a lift, because it's not something we're used to doing. And it's just like this heavy mental load. And so we just procrastinate doing it altogether, right? And including time, but also social energy, is this idea of communicating with the people who are interested in buying it and arranging a pickup time and negotiating price and whatever, right? That's more additional time of getting it out of your house. That's going to slow down your decluttering process. And it's social energy. If you're like me, who I'm an extroverted introvert, meaning that I am outgoing and people think that that I don't come across like an introvert, but I lose energy by being around people. Like even at my wedding, I had to literally, I worked in a break ahead of time. I knew, I was like, okay, from this time to this time, I'm going to go sit in a room by myself at my own wedding. Otherwise, I was going to be miserable starting 2 hours into it because I just can't socialize that much. So anyway, it's social energy. Okay. That's a downside. And then the last one, of course, is safety concerns, especially if you're like me, a little bit high on the anxiety scale. That's tough. You're giving people an idea of where you live and what kind of items you own. And then, of course, there's the whole scammer culture where you're like, is someone going to take my money? I don't do garage sales because of a safety concern that came up when I was a kid. And this is, different than selling online. But I mean, safety concern about selling things as a whole, this does play into, is that our house was burglarized in San Diego, California when I was, I don't know, I must have been around 5 years old. And we had just had a yard sale and somebody asked to come in and use our bathroom. And the next day we were burglarized, and they went through my bedroom through a sliding glass door that led into my bedroom, and it traumatized me for life. It's probably like the root of my anxiety. I don't know. There's probably a lot going on there. But my mom was like fairly certain. Now, she doesn't know for sure, but she was fairly certain that the person who went to the house to, quote, use the bathroom kind of scoped out the place. And she had like bad juju feelings about this person. But, you know, as women and people in general, like we try and ignore our gut and just like be nice, which is also why I don't ignore my gut. I'm like the guttiest gut person ever. Like I always told Aaron, like even, I mean, still he makes fun of it now because I'm really creepy about like what my intuition can tell. Like it's very bizarre. But I always joked with him before we got married. I was like, you know, you're never going to be able to cheat on me. Like I don't mess around. If my gut tells me something is off, I will full FBI that until I can prove it. And I always do prove it. He's like, okay, I'm scared of you, but will you marry me? So anyways, so that whole situation definitely turned me off the whole garage sale thing. And also like up to my concern when it comes to selling our possessions, because I associate that with getting burglarized due to a yard sale, even though I did not FBI that 30 years later to see if that was actually what happened. But that's what was ingrained in my little 5-year-old brain. And so here we are, you know, I guess it's been 31 years since I was 5. Time flies. Anyway, and the last downside, of course, is that you're not going to get things out as quickly, like I said, because of the time that it takes to get things uploaded, communicate, and get it out of the house. There's going to be procrastination there if you're a normal human being. If you're not a normal human being, congratulations. I'm really happy that you're good at not procrastinating these things. But then there's also this issue of like waiting to see if someone actually buys it and no one's buying it yet. And you're like, I'm just going to keep it up and I'm just going to maybe lower the price a little bit when really you just need to slash it to like $5. And even then someone might not want it. And then you need to just like cut your losses and be like, it's not going to happen. Right. But that takes mental energy to remember what you've already posted and what you're waiting for and what, you know, it's just a lot, especially if you have a lot that you're trying to declutter and get rid of. Like it slows down the process. And then you never get that dopamine hit, the good kind that comes from decluttering, from enjoying a space that has less stuff in it because you're still waiting for it all to sell. And then you never actually make progress because you don't have that momentum of like seeing a space completely cleared out, which makes you want to clear out the next space and the next space. And you feel good and you feel light and you feel fresh because you live in this decluttered, happy, freeing space. But you're never going to get that momentum swinging when there's a bunch of like, you know, stacks of $1 bills holding on to the wrecking ball that you're trying to get swinging and get momentum. I don't know if that visual was helpful at all. I don't even think it made sense, but just go with me on it, okay? That sometimes getting things out of the door is better, period. In the long run, just get it out, you know? Okay, but if you are going to sell your items, choose a price threshold to avoid the decision fatigue of what's worth selling to you as you look at an item. So I really believe in making as many decisions ahead of time as possible so that like current you doesn't get frozen. So say ahead of time before you even start decluttering, if I don't think I can get, I don't know, whatever your threshold is, $40 or more from something, I'm not going to sell it. I'm just going to donate it. I'm going to find another way to get this item out of my house other than selling it because it's not worth all of those downsides. It's not worth, is it really, if you're going to get like $5 for, I don't know, 3 baby t-shirts that your kids have outgrown that are like a little bit stained, you're probably not going to get money anyway. Also, is that $5 worth it to you? Now it might be. You get to choose your threshold. You get to choose it. But for me, mine is like $40-ish. And even if I'm like, this sweater is so cute and I spent $80 on it, probably not going to be able to sell a sweater on Facebook Marketplace for $80 or even for $40. Okay. People just don't spend that kind of money there. And so that's when I'm like, all right, I'm going to take it to this. I have this place nearby that's not Goodwill that like when I want to donate some nicer items, I take it to them and they bring it to, they very specifically have a storefront that's really cute actually because all their items are really nice. And they bring things also to women who have been affected by natural disasters like hurricanes, speaking of hurricanes, that don't have anything to wear. So anywho, I'll bring it there, even though I'm like, oh, maybe I could have gotten $20 for that. But for me, it's just not worth it at that price. Also want to offer, if you are going to sell things, here are just some tips for doing so in a way that is going to get you some money. Okay. So list things with videos because videos are pushed by the algorithm on Facebook Marketplace and they are really helpful for the buyer. Okay. So items that have videos are more likely to sell. Think about it. If you're buying a couch, if you see a bunch of pictures of it and that has a video, you're probably going to feel more confident buying that than someone who has like a grainy or just even a couple pictures of the couch, right? The more, the merrier, the more, the better. And the algorithms can help you out there. Some of these tips, by the way, are from stylebyemilyhenderson.com because I am not actually a Facebook marketplace guru, as you can probably tell. Anyways, post them up on a Thursday, okay? Because people then have a day or two to decide if they want it or to see it on their feeds, and then they have the weekend to come get it. So Thursday, things sell better. List things that are like new items at 40 to 60% of their original value. Like I said, you're lucky, even if it's brand new, to get 50% of what you spent on it. And of course, if it is not like new, it's going to be way less than that. All right. And then this is her Style by Emily Henderson little scammer guide, which I think is really helpful because, again, scammers are scary. I've been scammed before, and I think I'm like a pretty smart and also anxious person who thinks everyone's scamming me, and I still got scammed once. So here's the scammer guide when it comes to accepting payment. She says Zelle and cash are good. So once the funds are in your account in Zelle, they're yours, period. So they can't take it back. So you still need to be mindful of scammers here because anyone who asks for money back or who maybe tests the water with a small payment first, they probably are scammers. They don't have your best interests at heart, but Zelle doesn't, claw back payments in the way that other institutions might. So that's a pretty safe way, is to accept money from Zelle because the risk is really on the person sending it, not on the person receiving it. And then of course, cash. Cash is great. We love cash. Easy thumbs up. I always pretty much say I only accept cash because I don't want to deal with anything else. And like, I don't want to see you. I don't want to do a handoff and make small talk because, again, I am a hermit at heart. And so I just go off of, this is a cherry on top. If I'm getting rid of something and selling it and seeing any money back for it, like, I've completely let go of this idea that I need to sell things, but sometimes I still do because it just makes sense to sell it because I easily can make $50 or more on it. But I also am not so attached to the idea of getting that money back in my bank account because, like, I've survived this long without the $50 from that dresser, So I just tell the people, leave the cash under the rug. We have a Ring camera, so I'll be able to see it. And I leave the dresser on the front porch and I'm like, it'll be out there after 5 p.m. And that's how I do it. And I've never had someone not pay me. So that's how I rock and roll. But use your gut. Okay. And so speaking of using your gut, the next one is Venmo. And she does say that you really need to use your gut here because, like, so for me, I've never had a problem with someone sending payments on Venmo, also because I definitely, like I said, trust my gut. And so I don't sell to people who I don't feel like it's obvious that they're a normal human being, But I guess there's this thing they can do on Venmo where they mark on turn on for purchases. I don't really know what that means, but they can request a refund after pickup, which means that they'll bring your item home for free. Basically, they pay you and then they can still take back that money when they take a refund back. So just know that that can happen on Venmo. And then she says the big no-nos are PayPal and checks. So checks are probably going to be fake and you're going to be the one who gets in trouble by trying to cash a fake check. So don't take checks, period. And then PayPal is Venmo's parent company and has much stronger buyer protections. So it protects the person on the other end rather than the receiver. And so this is the scammer's like pick up and then charge back haven, as she puts it. You will be left holding the bag, is what she says. Do not accept money via PayPal. Okay. Even if none of that really made sense to you because you don't know how PayPal works, just know that checks and PayPal are no-nos. Venmo is use your gut, girlfriend. And yeses are Zelle and cash, but preferably cash. And I want to end with this encouragement that even if you are getting rid of stuff and you're not seeing that money come back into your account and you've just let it go, like Elsa says, I want you to know that you will make so much more money, quote, make more money by decluttering what you own, because you're not going to be making those repeat purchases. You're going to change your shopping habits moving forward because you've come face to face with the regret of the past and that guilt, like we talked about. And you're going to redefine your relationship with stuff as a whole. That is the beautiful part about decluttering your home, is you really recognize what you need, what you value, what you use, what you love. And you come to terms with the fact that stuff really isn't it. That is not what we're on this earth to do and to enjoy. It is fleeting. And we see that as we declutter all of our stuff that we no longer want or use or enjoy. Okay. And so you redefine your relationship with stuff as a whole, which is going to change your shopping habits moving forward and your consumption moving forward, because you are so aware of where your values actually lie, and it is not in the stuff. So you're going to save so much more money moving forward than you could ever get by keeping what you already own or even by selling it all. The money wasted in the future will be high if you continue operating under the sunk cost fallacy. So not only will you be holding on to all of these things that are weighing you down, that you're not getting your money back for anyway, but if you haven't decluttered it and come to terms with what that means, you're going to just keep doing the same thing. You're going to keep operating the same way and buying things, to get that immediate dopamine hit. And you're going to buy things because you're not coming face to face. You're not choosing to declutter things and have this brand new mindset about consumption. And therefore, you're going to be spending even more in the future, making the same mistake over and over again. So you're going to be saving so much more money by decluttering and changing that mindset moving forward. A quick example from my own life. Sure, like I mentioned, I'm a sweater person. I've mentioned that before, and I even brought up a sweater on this episode. I could have sold more of my nice sweaters, right? Or we could have kept all the stuff that my husband had owned in the garage for those just in case moments. But the amount of money I have saved by not buying new sweaters every season, because I've changed my relationship with how I see sweaters, has made me more money than had I sold all those other ones and let that selling process slow me down. I never would have enjoyed the decluttered closet to the extent that it affected me not wanting to buy more things to clutter up the closet and made me reevaluate my relationship with sweaters. Right? So I don't buy sweaters every fall anymore. So I used to buy, let's say, 4 new sweaters in the fall. And I've been living a decluttered life for how many years? Let's say I've been living it for 3 years. Okay. 3 times 4, that's 12. 12 times, let's say a sweater costs on average $40. I'm going to get my little thing out here. 12 times 40. I'm so sorry, Dad. I should be able to do this in my head. He's so disappointed in me. It's $480. I promise you I would not have been able to make $480 by keeping all the other sweaters. And I would have continued to buy more and more because I hadn't changed my relationship with them. So that's just a little example to consider. I'm going to leave you with this. When you're staring at an item that you're struggling to part with because you feel like it's just a waste of money, ask yourself these 4 questions. Is keeping it putting money back in my bank? Have I survived this long without the money I might get from selling it? Does it fall under my predetermined price point for selling? And the last one here is really deep, but am I going to continue spending money in the future because I haven't redefined my relationship with physical possessions? And keeping this item is proving that I'm still attached to excess for the sake of belonging, a coping mechanism, or status. And that's going to hurt my bank account in the future. Really think about that. I hope that this episode was helpful. I know that this is a tricky subject. I know that a lot of it is a mindset shift, but a lot of it is also very practical when it comes to repeat purchases or how we, consume moving forward. But at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do about a purchase from the past unless you sell it. And we talked about all the reasons you might not want to even take that approach. So all you can do is the best you can do moving forward. That is the beauty of life, is we can say, starting today, I'm going to operate differently. And so I hope that is the case for you as you consider money and what that looks like when it comes to decluttering. Thank you so much for being here. As always, it is a pleasure to be able to share these ideas with you and to hopefully help you move through life with a lot less stuff and a lot more intention. All right, guys, I'll see you next week. You just listened to an episode of Paring Down with me, Shannon Leyko. If you enjoyed the show, it would mean the world if you can leave a review wherever you listen and share this episode with a friend. Those reviews really are what keeps a podcast on its feet for the long haul, and I will read every single one with a huge smile on my face. So thank you ahead of time. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, be sure to follow along on Instagram at paring_down, where I offer lots of tips and inspiration for paring down, along with what's new here on the podcast. Till next time.